And you're live.
Very well. Thank you very much. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of East Hampton Planning Board meeting for August 24th, 2022. We had a couple of changes to the old agenda. Startop Ranch Section 2 is being adjourned. So if you're here for that, and interested in seeing that, tune in to a future episode. We have on for tonight number of matters for site plan review relating to various telephone service applications, as well as one new application. And we also have, that's in our work session, so an urban renewal map. We have a public hearing scheduled for 7 o'clock on the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation site plan. And we have a couple of standard resolutions and boards of review. We are going to cover the telephone application, sorry, that's shorthand, but the cell phone service applications first, and then the regular meeting items, which are the boards of review and the artist studio. And if we have time, we'll also do the urban renewal map. Then after the public hearing, we'll come back and we will cover the Oceanside Beach Resort renovation. Well, it's a regular meeting item, but it's the resolution. And then finally, we'll close up with the application Hildreth Advisors and Amicans. So if you all didn't follow that, we'll just move along and hopefully you'll catch it. Eric, if you would take us through, I guess, the Verizon and Montauk Community Church modification first.
Sure.
Is the applicant here on that? We expect the applicant?
The applicant is here, yes.
Well, on. Very well. Okay, thank you. And Sharon, this one's going to be yours. Okay, Eric, go right ahead.
Yep. So this is ostensibly just a swap out of equipment. As you can see on the screen, this is one of the spires of the Montauk Community Church, just past downtown in Montauk. About 2 years ago, the board approved a new facility. You can see in this rendering of the building that the building's essentially stepped up that portion, that very top portion that has the star on it that is not there. That's obviously. That was added about 2 years ago. That has behind it wireless equipment in the form of panel antennas, remote radio heads. The applicants are basically just proposing to swap out some of that equipment with newer equipment. It will still be completely concealed behind that structure. Showing you a little bit of the elevation drawing here. Also, they're proposing to relocate some of the equipment from in that addition on the top of the tower to actually the second story of the building in an equipment room. Basically everything is interior, will be visible to the public. It's an eligible facilities request. What you're looking at now is part of the memorandum from Cityscape, the wireless consultants, and they and the planning department recommend approval. And if you agree, we'll have a resolution ready for you at the next meeting.
Very well, thank you, Eric. Does the applicant wish to be heard regarding this application?
Yes.
Want to identify yourself, please?
My name is Jessica Zalin. I am an associate with the Amato Law Group located at 666 Old Country Road in Garden City, New York, 11530. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, New York SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, in connection with its request to modify its existing communication facility located on and within the existing church building at 850 Montauk Highway. Eric did a good job of recapping the proposed changes to the facility, but I just wanted to make myself available to answer any questions that the board may have regarding this application.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Sharon?
No, I don't have anything to add. So all hidden, and it's just improving the equipment that's right there.
Very well. Okay. Do we require any action by the board on this?
Not at this meeting. We'll have a resolution for you at the next one.
Very good. Does anyone have anyone to add on this particular one? Okay, very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On to the next one, which is Dish at 375 Montauk Highway. Lou, that's yours. Is the applicant here on that? Is it the same council or a different council?
Different, so let me just check.
That's the applicant here.
Derek, I think.
Okay, very well. Very
No. So this is an application to add wireless equipment for Dish at a facility that already has all the major carriers. This is actually the site next to the landfill in Montauk. You can see the site location map. The arrow there in the site photo is pointing towards that existing tower. Basically, Dish is just looking to co-locate. This is a tier 2 application under the current wireless code, and just showing you a cross section of where that equipment would be near the top of the tower. Again, this is what you're looking at as part of the report from Cityscape, the wireless consultants. They recognize this also as an eligible facility request, and both they and the planning department recommend that you approve this.
Very well. Does the applicant wish to be heard regarding this application?
Yes,
Go right ahead. Now, identify yourself, please.
yes. Good evening. My name is Derek Picnic, site acquisition consultant working for In-Range Solutions. Tonight, I present for Crown Castle on behalf of Dish Network LLC. Dish proposes to install 3 new antennas to the existing telecommunications tower located at 375 Montauk Highway in Montauk, New York, 11954 South Tower. Dish proposes to utilize the existing vacant rad center of 100 feet on the existing 120-foot tower. Please note there are multiple existing carriers on the 120-foot monopole. Also, the height of the tower shall not be modified and shall remain as is. In addition, the existing fenced area should not be changed either. We believe that this site qualifies as an eligible facilities request. And, the modifications to the transmission equipment do not increase the height of the tower by 20 feet or 10%, which is greater, and we are not increasing the height of the tower. As for the modifications to the transmission equipment, do not protrude from the edge of the tower by 20 feet or more than the width of the tower. Whichever of these 2 dimensions is greater at the level where the transmission equipment modifications are made, our proposed installation is within the guidelines set forth. And the modifications to the transmission equipment do not involve the installation of more than the standard number of equipment cabinets for the technology involved, not to exceed 4, and we are only installing 2 cabinets. As for the transmission equipment, not entailing any excavation or deployment outside of the tower, we are not excavating or deploying outside of the tower site. As for the modifications equipment, not defeating any existing concealment elements of the tower, we are not defeating any existing concealment elements of the tower. Transmission equipment comply with prior conditions of approval of the tower unless the non-compliance is due to an increase in height, increase in width, addition of equipment cabinets, or any excavation that does not exceed the corresponding substantial change thresholds in numbers 1 through 4. We are complying with all prior conditions of the approval of the tower. In terms of potential coverage, the site is required to work to fill the existing gap in coverage as Dish is the new provider in the area. At this time, there's no coverage provided by Dish in the region, and they are proactively working to provide coverage to its existing and future subscribers. At this time, Crown has a long-term lease with the property owners who have also signed a letter of authorization in support of our proposed application to this project. And based on the review of the site plan, Dish is proposing to co-locate on the existing telecommunications facility. Please note, we provided a full structural analysis report, and we do not anticipate any engineering concerns, and the existing structure has met all required compliances and standards. We're proposing to add 3 antennas, 6 remote radio heads, 1 OVP, 1 hybrid cable, along with the required equipment space, which is a 5x7 equipment platform. I have my architectural engineer, Philip Bertner, here as well to provide any additional questions to the plans if you have. As far as the fenced area, we are not changing anything nor the height of the tower the underlying structure will remain as is. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter this evening. At this time, I would like to open up the floor to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Lou, this one's yours.
Yeah, after that thorough and exhaustive representation by the applicant's attorney, plus the planning board's recommendation and cityscape's recommendation, I cannot do anything but approve this application.
That's pretty definitive. Anyone have anything you want to add to that definitive statement by you? Okay. I get it. You'll have a resolution off the next meeting. The next one is Verizon at 260 Fireplace Road. I don't have the board number on this one. I'm not on my agenda.
I'll have to check.
No.
Oh, that's the church.
Just wanted to say thank you and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here on that?
Yes,
So Jessica Zalin as well.
I am.
Welcome back.
Thank you. As I previously said, my name is Jessica Zalin. I'm an attorney with the Amato Law Group, PLLC, located at 666 Old Country Road in Garden City, New York, 11530. And I am here on behalf of the applicant, New York SFSA Limited Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless in connection with its application to upgrade its existing communication facility. This one is located within the existing concealment pole on the town-owned property at 258 or 260 Springs Fireplace Road, depending on what materials you look at.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let Eric go ahead, and I guess I'll pick up this one.
Sure. So this is one of two towers that are, there's two different addresses. There's one tower that's by the highway department building, one that's by the transfer station at the landfill. Most people would consider these both to be at the same site, which is the East Hampton landfill. The tower in question is this stealth monopole that you approved a number of years ago. AT&T was the applicant for this. The original applicant, their equipment is in there, as is Verizon. This is an application from Verizon. They're basically just proposing to swap out some of the equipment that is interior mounted in this monopole. And then you'll see on this overhead, this is what I'm talking about with the two poles. The old monopole that is to be removed is the one on the left-hand side of the screen near the highway department building. That currently only has T-Mobile/Sprint on it. Their lease agreement expires soon. We're looking to move them over to the new concealed unipole tower, which is what you see on the right-hand side of the screen. That really isn't a matter for this application. As I say, Verizon is already in the new tower, and they're just looking to replace their equipment. So basically the same thing goes for this application as the two previous. The planning department and cityscape recommend that you approve it as an eligible facilities request. The only condition that we would attach for this one is one recommended by cityscape as a result of the structural analysis, which, quoting the structural analysis, says we recommend carrying out a soil investigation to confirm foundation type, soil conditions, and enable calculations to be carried out to confirm adequacy. Basically, that's something we would just throw in as a condition of approval before the applicant could obtain the building permit. So basically, it would just be that they'd have to perform a soil test to ensure that the swap out of equipment and the change in load on the tower, that the base of the tower can handle it. I would suspect that it can, but as cityscape has recommended here, you should make that a condition of approval if you choose to grant it. And again, cityscape and the planning department does recommend that you grant this request.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask the applicant, are you good with that?
Well, if I may just speak to that issue, I did, once I saw the comment in the cityscape letter, I went back to my structural engineer and asked why they were making this recommendation, if there was anything, if they could elaborate on that so that I'd be able to better explain it to you during this meeting. And I was told that the that is likely just a vestige held over from another report and they did not proofread correctly. And they issued a revised version of the report without that caveat, which I can submit to the planning board as early as tomorrow via FedEx, if that would be acceptable. Or I could submit it electronically via email this evening to Eric.
So what we're reading here is old news, is that the idea?
Yes, essentially, the structural engineer confirmed that their structural team does not believe soil sampling is required for this particular application in order to confirm the structural details.
Cityscape structural engineer. Cityscape.
No, so Cityscape's letter noted that the KMB structural report had a reference to soil sampling to be conducted as a confirmatory issue. However, when I followed up with KMB said, I apologize, that shouldn't have made it into the report. And they issued a new version to me, which I received this week, and I will be able to submit to the town, again, via FedEx as early as tomorrow. I can send it out.
Let me ask Jody, does that need to be sent in the usual multiple copies?
And with a cover letter.
With a cover letter. So you'll need to submit that as you would any other application, multiple copies with a cover letter to the planning board rather than doing an email tonight.
Sure, so a cover letter and 10 copies of that report.
We'll work it out with the applicant and Cityscape, and if that condition is not necessary, we won't include it. And again, this one is one that we would have a resolution for you at the next meeting. So I'm confident we can resolve it.
And based on the representation that we're receiving from council tonight, we don't need to make a covenant and restriction to the effect that's been in the old news that we received. Right?
Okay. Let's see what happens.
Well, if it turns out not to be the case, then it'll come back on our agenda and we'll do a covenant and restriction. Okay.
Well, condition.
Oh, can I all right, anything else that anyone else has on this particular one? Okay, very well, then send that along and we'll presumably see you again on that. Okay?
Great, thank you for your time.
Looking here and I'm looking here. All right, so we've gotten through the site plan reviews other than Hildreth Advisors and McAnsett. Let me ask you, Glen Valley,
Yep.
do we have sufficient time
Yes,
to cover that?
I believe so. Yeah.
I don't see Will, you're covering that one?
Yes, yep. And Brian Locascio, who is on Zoom, is their representative.
Very good. Oh, the representative is here.
Here on Zoom, yes.
Oh, okay, well, okay. Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Sure. So this property is also the subject of a preliminary subdivision application that the board has seen recently. In fact, the last time you reviewed it, you made a negative declaration under SECRA and deemed it ready for a public hearing. So that is pending. This matter specifically is the UR map modification. Again, this property is a conglomeration of numerous UR pieces of lots. And the applicants are proposing, this is the preliminary subdivision map, to basically divide it in half. They're providing the requisite reserved area, and both of the lots meet minimum lot width, minimum lot area. So basically, the map you see here is the idea, and just to show you just a rudimentary picture of the UR map itself. This illustration just shows basically that they're proposing to divide it as the preliminary subdivision would. However, since this does require a UR map modification, which the town board would need to approve, the planning board is required, as you know, with all UR map modifications, to send comments. We would recommend that you send comments to the town board, but also, provided you're okay with this, and again, the preliminary subdivision map has been deemed ready for a public hearing. The only thing we would say is just to include in that letter that the town board should really hold off on putting the UR map modification to a public hearing or an approval until the planning board has finished its business with the preliminary subdivision and the final subdivision process. That way, any conditions, changes to the map that the board, that this board feels is appropriate, will be reflected in the UR map modification when the town board hears it. So we have this before you tonight to process it in a timely manner, but really procedurally, we don't intend to bring this in front of the town board for the UR map modification until this board, the planning board, is satisfied with the subdivision.
Will the subdivision generate a public hearing or an opportunity for a public hearing?
Yes, you will be having a public hearing shortly in next month. It's the preliminary.
Regarding the subdivision.
Yes, yeah, the preliminary subdivision and that public hearing is being scheduled. That's coming up soon. There will also be a public hearing in front of the town board for the UR map. So there's actually two bites of the apple.
Okay. Ms. Lucasio, do you wish to be heard on this?
I have nothing more to add. I agree with what Eric provided and all the comments in the memo. Just want to thank you again for your attention here and allowing us to proceed. Here for any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any further comment or addition to Eric's suggestion?
Just a quick clarification. Eric, so you're saying that we would go through the subdivision first and just condition any possible approval on the
Yes.
UR map? Okay.
Yes, yeah, which is standard.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Anyone else on this? Okay. Ed, did you have? No? All right, very well, thank you. Okay, we will now, Daniel Forkin, Artist Studio, schedule a public hearing. Ed, would you?
Yes.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night, thank you very much.
Sorry, I don't need to read the whole thing.
Let's go on.
All right. Yes. The matter of the application of Daniel Forkin Art Studio, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-106-1.18, schedule a public hearing. A public hearing is hereby scheduled for Wednesday, the 14th of September, 2022 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard to consider the said application. Written comments can be submitted by email to planningbboard@hamptonny.gov and by mail to 300 Pentago Place, 103 East Hampton, 11937, and received on or before close of business on the day of the public hearing. I have read the notice to schedule a public hearing and call for its approval.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed 7-0. And then the last two items we have for the public hearing, which will take place in 7 minutes, are two boards of review. The first one is the request of Sean Murphy for a building permit on the premises at 17 South Flag Street in Montauk, lots number 8, lot 52, map 10, number 1013, urban renewal parcel. Urban renewal parcel is 135, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-28-6-16.2. The undertaking is in the sum of $12,000, and the work that's going to be required to be performed. I read from the engineer's report. The scope of work shall involve 132 linear feet of roadway along South Flag Street, including survey and stakeout for the required improvements. 132 feet of roadway, linear feet of roadway shall be measured from the existing edge of roadway at South Favor Street. Number 2, clear and grow all the vegetation within the right of way that is as required to construct the roadway and as described in item 1. Number 3, grade and prepare the stabilized soil base to the limits described in item 1 to the satisfaction of the town engineer. Number 4, install a minimum of 2.5 inches compacted thickness of base course asphalt, New York State Department of Transportation Type 3 binder course to a width of 20 feet over the area described in item 1. And number 5, the town engineer must be notified at least 72 hours, but not more than 1 week before the commencement of work. I move for the adoption of this board of review. To the second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed 7. All right, next is the request of Brett Harris for a building permit on the premises at 21 South Eaton Street in Montauk, lot number 7, block 28, map number 1013. Suffolk County Tax Map 300-28-4-13. The amount of the undertaking is $12,000. The work to be performed is limited The limits of the road improvement are along North Faraday Street as follows. Prune the shoulder areas of the road on both sides of the roadway and prepare the existing asphalt pavement as is necessary for the installation of new top course asphalt pavement overlay starting at the intersection of South Essex Street and continue along North Faraday Street for a distance of 316 linear feet. Install a minimum of, number 2, install a minimum of 1.5 inches compacted thickness of top course asphalt pavement overlay on North Faraday Street, New York State Department of Transportation, type 6F, wearing course to an approximate width of 20 feet starting at the intersection of South Essex Street and continue along North Faraday Street for a distance of 316 linear feet. And 3, town engineer must be notified within 72 hours, but not more than 1 week before the commencement of all work. I move for the adoption of this order review. Is there a second?
Second.
Any, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's the second reading. It is now 6:57, and in keeping with our previous practice, it being 3 minutes before 7, we will begin the reading in of the public hearing notice, which Ed, you have approved.
I do. Take notice that a public hearing will be held before the East Hampton Town Planning Board at Town Hall 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, August 24th, 2002, at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, to consider the application of East Hampton Healthcare Foundation site plan approval pursuant to Article 6 of Chapter 255 of the East Hampton Town Code to construct a 34-foot split rail fence and install new additional lighting structures. The lot contains a medical arts building, which is a semi-public facility. The property contains 117,220 square feet, 2.69 acres, and is located on the north side of Montauk Highway, East Hampton, and is situated in a commercial industrial zoning district as shown on the official zoning map of County East Hampton, and are identified on the Suffolk County tax map as parcels 300-188-1-8.3. Subject application is classified as a type 2 action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, Part 617 of the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, and Chapter 128 Environmental Quality Review of the Town Code. A site plan prepared by David H. Fox, LSPC, dated revised June 23rd, 2022, and a parking lot lighting and fence plan prepared by D.B. Bennett, PEPC, dated May 31st, 2022, are available for inspection at Planning Board offices, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York. Samuel Kramer, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Nancy, do we have jurisdiction?
Yes, Chairperson, I reviewed the affidavit as well as the postal receipt, and it does appear that it was properly noticed.
Very well. In that case, Eric, do you want to give us a background?
I think you technically have like 30 seconds or something. But yeah, I'll go background. I'm sorry. Yeah.
We haven't started.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
We're building to that.
Yes. Let me just, I thought I was sharing screen. I apologize.
Looking to my clock.
Okay, so this is the location of the property, and in fact, we are here. If you need a "you are here" arrow. So right over here next door off of Panago Place. The applicants are, as noted in the notice, proposing to add a fence along the southeastern side of the property, as well as update the exterior lighting throughout the site. I will now show you that on the site plan and the lighting plan that they've submitted. So this is the site plan, and I've zoomed in. This is obviously not oriented with north up, but basically the proposed fence. Try to zoom in a little bit more for you if I can. Let's move that. So just so you can see it a little clearer, but basically this is a fence along their boundary with their neighboring property to the south. There is an existing metal and wire fence that is not on their property. That's not the subject of this application. There's a 20-foot wide, that indicates right-of-way. That's not a road, it's an access easement that is on the other side of that fence. Basically, the proposal here is to install that fence to keep people from parking on the East Hampton Healthcare property. We also have the comprehensive site lighting plan, which you can see here, which mostly consists of bollards along the walkway, and then redoing the existing post lights throughout the site. We have reviewed this and it's found to be in conformance with the town code and the planning board's guidelines for exterior lighting.
Very well, thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard with respect to this application?
Right.
I believe those are.
Okay, I just don't want to cut it ahead of anybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, Madeline Van John, Tarbert and Lester. We represent the owners of Chris's Bakery at 219 Pantico Road. John Tarbert submitted a letter this afternoon, so hopefully you all got emailed copies of that. Basically, our client's concern is that they take access, or the rear access is along that easement that Eric was just describing, along with many other businesses. And a lot of people park back there for all the different businesses. And essentially by putting a fence right along the edge, just along the edge of the roadway, we're concerned it's going to create more of a safety issue. People park parallel along there. People have to drive around there and you know, it creates a safety issue of nowhere to go to get around someone. And previously when people were parking parallel, you know, they were sort of halfway on the road, halfway not. None of that is technically an approved parking, but no one can really control where these people go when they come to get food at any of these places along the way or to visit any of the other businesses. So it's kind of a hazardous situation. And it just doesn't seem that it really serves any legitimate planning purpose to allow a fence right along the edge of the property. I mean, there's other ways to deal with the situation. We're mostly just concerned that it's going to create a further safety issue, people continuing to parallel park, but now they'll be bounded in by this fence and it'll be more difficult for other cars, emergency vehicles, everyone to get through there. And then we're also concerned about the precedent it might set for just allowing fences directly along the edge of a well-traveled road. Just from a safety standpoint, there's really no escape route for anybody who gets stuck in a traffic jam, emergency vehicles, anything like that. That's our only issue. We don't have any concerns about the lighting or any of the other aspects.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment with respect to this application? Is the applicant wish to be heard with respect to this application?
Hi, good evening. Joan McGivern from Toomey Latham. I'm here with Sheila Rogers, who's the executive director of the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation, and Sue Bennett, who did the fence plan and the lighting plan. I think it's helpful to go to the genesis of how we came to be before you, which is the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation was getting violations for people parking in the right-of-way, partially on their property and partially in the right-of-way. The fire marshal has signed off on this plan and also advised that we post no parking signs because the 20-foot right-of-way is supposed to be for emergency access vehicles. Obviously, parking is a problem in that area, but in order for East Hampton Healthcare Foundation to get out of getting these violations, they were advised they should put a fence up. Those violations are still pending, hopefully your approval of putting in the fence. Do you have any other questions? It's a pretty nondescript fence. It's 34 inches high and it's a split rail fence, so it'll fit into the scenery.
It's public hearing, so we don't have questions, but we're here for here to hear comments.
And the fence is actually going to be 2 or 3 feet off the property line. It's not exactly on the property line.
There being no further comments, public comments here at the meeting, we have a limited time for written comment according to the notice, I believe.
7 days, right?
Yeah. And I think we have another comment that we received that's in the record. Besides the letter from Todd and Lester, there was another letter I saw came across it. I didn't circulate it to the board. I'm not sure I say, unless I'm completely wrong and I got it mixed up with something else. But I believe that there was to my, no, my,
That's
highly not. But I'll check. In any event, members of the public who might have comment, there are 7 days within which to.
No, that's not the dream, that's not.
It's on the notice.
And
It says now.
Yes,
In that case,
Yeah.
but I was just saying,
The last few of them.
We have.
that's it.
Yeah, now that we have all the open meetings.
Oh, we're not doing that anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Maya, thank you very much for correcting me. In that case, I move to, actually, you.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we are now done with all the items on the agenda, with the exception of the resolution on Oceanside Beach Resort and the Amagansett, the application Amagansett Hills. I don't see, you're not here, I'm quite sure, on the Oceanside Beach Resort renovation. So why don't we do the Hildreth application first? Give you an opportunity to get out.
I'm still up there.
How we go?
Okay, hello, everybody. My name is Tina Vavilas Lagaran, and I will be walking you through this. This is the first time I'm doing all this sharing. I'll have to be checking that I'm sharing the proper thing, so please bear with me as I do that. This is a preliminary site plan application for Hildreth. We get the name right, Hildreth Advisors and Amagansett. I'm going to just zoom in to the property to show you where it is on the aerial. It's right here. It's located at 136 Main Street in Amagansett, just east of Indian Wells Highway when you enter Amagansett. And I am going to show the site plan to walk you through what it currently looks like. Is the site plan showing?
You got it.
Yes, it is. Perfect. Okay. So the site currently has an existing 2-story structure fronting Montauk Highway here, and a 1-story portion of the building, which is proposed to be renovated. The 2-story structure fronting Main Street is a historic structure. It is not proposed for renovation in this application. The application also proposes a new 2-story building with apartments within commercial structure on the 2nd floor and 6 dry retail uses on the ground floor, a multiple business complex according to the zoning code. There is also the proposal for the striping of 53 parking spaces, paving to facilitate site navigation, and some lawn area here is shown in the dotted lines. Currently, there's parking in the front of the property, which is not proposed to be modified as we understand it. And there is some encroachment into the rear setbacks proposed for the parking in the rear of the property. We took some pictures.
Yep, yeah.
All right. Just want to make sure. So this is the 2-story historic building on Montauk Highway, currently occupied by several facilities, commercial businesses. This is a view from within the property. Here's the 2-story historic structure and the remaining uses in the back. There's currently a repair garage operating, and there is some outdoor storage. When you walk to the site, you can see it. The rest of the site is generally used for parking. It's unimproved, just gravel. There is a fenced area where there's additional parking facilities and some boats and some containers back in there. This is a picture, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the issues of an existing driveway connecting
the subject property at 136 Main Street with the property directly to the east. It's labeled on the preliminary site plan as an apparent ingress egress, which we had some questions on. This is the existing driveway to Montauk Highway. And then this is parking, which is located right adjacent to the sidewalk on Montauk Highway. So I will just go back and leave the site plan up as I talk through the memo. So the proposed project includes the renovation of 4,518 square feet of interior space in the existing one-story building located on site to have a renovated multiple business complex, and the construction of the new 7,200 square foot structure with a fourth floor multiple business complex, an additional 6 dry retail uses on the ground floor, and on the second story, 4 affordable apartments within commercial structure. The 4 apartments, there are 2 bedrooms, all less than 1,000 square feet, and one bedroom at about 500 square feet. New paving to facilitate the striping of 53 spaces is also proposed. The preliminary site plan did not include specific access, stormwater, or sanitary discharge details. Regarding the issues with respect to SECRA, upon formal application, we believe the project is likely a unlisted action pursuant to SECRA and Chapter 128 of the Town Code. However, a type 1 could be triggered if the traffic impact study that we requested when we talk about traffic shows that the project may alter the level of service on Montauk Highway. If a full site plan is submitted, we recommend the planning board request lead agency status for the project. Regarding the project description, the preliminary application lacked a detailed project narrative to describe the existing and proposed uses. Upon formal submission, the applicant should submit a more detailed explanation that describes all aspects of the proposed project. The planning department notes that the following details and information would be useful to be clarified by the applicant: the anticipated hours of operation for existing and proposed commercial uses, the number of existing and proposed employees, the number of uses currently occupying the existing 1- and 2-story structure on site. The proposed plans were submitted for renovating that interior, but they were not labeled, and it wasn't quite clear how many uses are existing and what the final tally is going to be. However, based on the site visit and the site survey, the site is currently occupied by multiple retail uses in the 1-story section and the 2-story building, and there is currently an operating repair garage on site. We talked about the gravel unpaved area serving as parking and storage. We did want to note that for our records, the 1998 site plan approval indicated that storage of building and landscaping materials shall not be permitted outside the building on the subject property. We'd like the project narrative and associated site plan to demonstrate what consideration has been given to the harmonious coexistence of residential and commercial uses on site. To the extent practical, building entrances should be separated for commercial entrances, parking for residents should be dedicated, and screening between the uses should be provided. In addition, for consideration, the proposed lot coverage is very close to that which is permitted under the zoning. We'd like the applicant to provide more detailed coverage calculations. Currently, the zoning table on the site plan includes percentages associated with the existing and proposed coverages. The square footage of each should be provided with additional detail to allow us to properly vet that information. The proposal for this project requires special permits. Both apartments within commercial structures and multiple business complexes are both special permit uses in the central business zoning where the site is located. The applicant should consult section 255, article 5 in its entirety for requirements associated with the special permits. Per section 255-5-50, specific standards and safeguards, the specific criteria associated with the approval of multiple business complex and apartments for commercial structures must be met in order for the planning board to approve these uses. We attached those sections to this memo for the review of everyone. The applicant should also note that if any of the retail units proposed are formula businesses, a special permit would be required at that time to facilitate those, and the definition of a formula business is also attached to the memo. At this early time in the planning for the project, we reviewed the special permit criteria associated with the multiple business complex as it relates to the project. We thought that those warranted some special consideration at this time, and I'm just going to go through those, give you an overview of them and the planning department's recommended assessment and considerations for those. The first criteria for the multiple business complex is that the use shall only be permitted where the planning board determines it is in the community interest to allow the master planning of the site to bring multiple businesses on. In the determination, the planning board is required to seek coordination with the architectural review board regarding the design, scale, appearance of the proposed complex and the compatibility of it with the adjacent properties in the neighborhood. So we're noting here that this proposal does include two primary structures, both with multiple commercial uses. And in the review of the application, that the planning board and architectural review board consider how the scale of this relates to the existing development pattern in the downtown, the community where it's to be located. The next criteria is regarding the size of the complex, not resulting in environmental degradation. Can we just zoom in a bit? Okay. Not resulting in environmental degradation, economic destruction, or overburden of public facilities, including streets and parking. The planning board is, the planning department is recommending that upon formal application, the applicant perform a traffic study to confirm that the surrounding street network can adjust and manage this additional volume and not impact adjacent roadway level of service. The planning department is also recommending that the applicant provide more parking calculations to demonstrate that parking will be adequate, and fire marshal comments will also be requested. The third criterion is regarding the number of individual business uses permitted to come into existence, not exceeding that which would have been possible on individual properties. The application must comply with the requirements in the town code, where the minimum lot area associated with each use is 3,000 square feet. And the total number of uses cannot exceed those permitted on individual properties. With the lot area of 47,890 square feet, that would be up to 15.9 or 15 uses. As I mentioned, the building plans are not clearly labeled, so we're not sure how many uses are proposed. And it should be noted that a proposal for more than 15 uses would require variances. And then just going back to, item 1, we should consider whether or not the number of uses in the proposed size is compatible with the current community interests and neighborhood character and enhance it. The fourth criterion is regarding coverage and total coverage on the site, not exceeding and preferably being well below that which is allowed in the district for buildings and structures on a single lot. Regarding this, we note that the total coverage proposed on the site is 79.85%, which is only 0.15% below the maximum allowed in the zone. While this is allowable and it's not exceeding the total coverage, it does not meet the preference of this item to be well below that value. And again, for the formal site plan, we recommend opportunities to reduce the total coverage be explored and potentially applied. And that upon formal submission, the applicant should submit more detailed calculations to demonstrate how the percentages on the site plan were calculated to give us square footages of different coverage types to allow us to evaluate compliance. It is also noted that the building coverage is well below the 50% allowed by the dimensional requirements. In addition to the criteria I just noted regarding the planning for decision making, apartments within commercial structures also have several special permit criteria that would need to be met. And the planning board must also consider the criteria in section 255-5-40, which is the general standards for special permits in the decision making. That code section is also attached to the memo. Regarding traffic, we are requesting that the applicant retain a qualified traffic engineer to perform a traffic impact study to analyze the impacts to local roadways. We're thinking that this use may represent a substantial increase in traffic generated on the project site. The study should analyze the trip generation associated with the employees, truck traffic, and residents. Regarding site access and internal navigation, we did have several questions. The preliminary site plan lacked some details regarding the site driveway and internal site navigation that we would like on a more formal submission to see more clearly. Specifically, the 20-foot wide emergency access that's required was not clearly shown in dimensions. There's a driveway to Montauk Highway. We all saw on the photos, it's not labeled on the site plan, wasn't really clear why. The ingress egress, I'm gonna have to zoom in here. Make sure that what you're seeing is what I'm seeing. Okay, thank you, Eric. You can see here apparent ingress and egress. This was the driveway I was showing to go into that eastern site. There's like a very narrow driveway to Montauk Highway through that site. I don't know that it's used, but that's what's shown on the site plan. So we'd like, more clarification if there's some kind of formal agreement with that property. It should be produced if there's an access easement or any other thing like that. The other question we had with respect to site navigation was the truck loading and unloading area. We would like to see the turning radius just to ensure that navigation for trucks accessing the site will be sufficient. And we were also noting that Montauk Highway is of course a New York State roadway. If there is any work proposed to the driveway, DOT coordination or permitting could be required. So we would just want the applicant to confirm whether or not that's going to be the case for their final scope of work. Regarding parking, with respect to the current layout of the parking on site, it's not consistent with the town code. And I did put the code section in here and emphasize just the last statement that says wherever feasible parking areas shall be placed at the rear of the building and or screened by planting so as to not be visible from the highway. As everyone saw, there's parking adjacent to the sidewalk on Montauk Highway, which is not consistent and probably not the safest configuration. So we do recommend that the existing and proposed parking configuration be reconsidered to more closely align with the town code, and additional front yard plantings as part of a comprehensive landscaping plan may provide some screening. On the preliminary site plan, the applicant referenced a previous planning department approval for 29 parking stalls on site. While we note this is consistent with what we found in our records, it's unclear that this number of spaces correlates to the current uses on site. And further, we would need to see parking calculations that assert compliance with whatever's being proposed now. So in the next submission, we would like to see detailed parking calculations that match the current proposal. Regarding historic and archaeological significance, the proposed project is located within the Amagansett Historic District, and we did note that the two-story structure on the property is historic, referenced as the Amagansett Garage, and Chapter 255, Appendix A from the that contains the Amagansett Historic District Guidelines is attached for ease of reference with respect to guidelines for the district and this project, sorry, the site in particular. I listed it there. It just says to maintain the architectural integrity of the two-story main building is a requirement in the code. The other thing I'd like to note is that the site is in an area designated as a buffer zone for potential archaeological significance. We suggest the applicant reach out to the State Historic Preservation Office via their online application system to determine if further archaeological study is warranted. Upon formal submission, a copy of the SHPO correspondence commenting on the project should be submitted for town review. Regarding the building design, considering the new buildings proposed and the historic significance of the 136 Main Street site, review of the ARB is going to be required. Architectural renderings of the building were submitted and did not evoke consistency with the historic character of the structure. I know you're seeing something wrong here. I know.
You scroll down on that one. You're in the right place. You just gotta scroll down.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah. Okay. So these are the floor plans. If you want to see them, we can come back to those. But I am going to go.
That's the floor plans for the new building, right?
Yes. Do you want to have a look at those real quick?
No.
Okay. Yeah. This is the floor plan for the existing building. Renovations, okay, getting there. They load slow. So here's the rendering. You can see, which is good, it appears the historic structure fronting Montauk Highway will remain untouched. You know, that would be good just to continue to clarify the submission. But here's the renderings of the one-story portion of that existing facility being renovated with the two-story building in the background. And then here's another view. Now this is the two-story building we're seeing with the multiple business complex and the apartments above. So the planning department recommends that the visual character of the proposed work should not detract from the historic quality of the site or the Ambiente Historic District. Regarding waivers, the proposed parking lot is encroaching into the rear setback line, which is adjacent to land indicated on the site survey as residential. Sorry.
You have to go back to my,
It's frozen now. Sorry, hold on. Here we go. Site plan?
that's fine. Yeah, I was gonna say the area, if you want to go back to the area.
Oh, okay, sure. I was gonna,
That's fine.
yeah.
That shows it.
So here's the parking encroachment and here's the setback line. And then this is currently used as a residence. So there is a proposed, you know, the planning board is able to, you know, grant a waiver, you know, is it something that's advisable, is questionable. And then the preliminary site plan, as you can see, does not provide any details on how the residential use would be buffered from the parking area.
Can you bring up the overhead photograph?
Sure,
He means the aerial and I have to,
you have to go back into your system.
yeah.
Okay,
I don't mean to
No, it's okay.
shake up
It's
the
okay.
flow.
you should test me now.
It's just a matter of the buffer. It's better, I think, for us to see the buffer if we can have an actual photograph. There you go, and tighten that up a little bit. Makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It times out, it's, you know,
Oh, yeah.
fun with technology.
Nothing but.
So here's the site, and here's the residential property right on the back. Does that work? Looks like a pool.
And it looks like there's a building at the back of that, the subject lot. Is that a building or a?
I don't think so. When I was there, I saw like a storage container.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what that is. It's hard to tell. I think so. Okay. I'll put the site plan back up. Okay, and then side yard waivers may also be required based on the existing preliminary site plan. Those things don't change. Regarding stormwater drainage, the site plan indicated that existing dry wells are to remain. Additional stormwater infrastructure is going to be required due to the creation of substantial expanses of new paved surfaces. In general, it's advisable to minimize paved surfaces to the greatest extent practical, consistent with the project needs, and we encourage the applicant to consider opportunities for reduction of the impervious surfaces. In any case, a grading and drainage plan that depicts adequate stormwater infrastructure to achieve compliance with the town standards is going to be required. In addition, if the disturbance is going to be greater than 1 acre, a stormwater pollution prevention plan will be required. We should just see the disturbance numbers to confirm whether or not that's the case. Regarding sanitary systems, the survey did not include the location of existing sanitary structures, and the preliminary site plan did not show them. The applicant should indicate the location of existing facilities and plans for them, either reuse or abandonment, and note that abandoned systems must be closed in accordance with US EPA and Suffolk County procedures. Regarding the proposed sanitary systems, the site located in groundwater management zone 4 that allows 600 gallons per day. But considering the proposed number of commercial uses and apartments, the proposal would exceed this cap. The town's affordable housing credit program in Town Code Chapter 250 is available to facilitate a transfer of flow rates to permit up to double the allowed density for the site due to the affordable housing element. Should the applicant pursue that option, the town board's approval would be required. We attached the overview of issuance procedures associated with these credits. The applicant should determine if they'd like to participate. Even with the transfer of flow rights, a IA system would be required, as would Suffolk County Department of Health and Services approval. Other approvals required for this application include the Office of Fire Prevention, design for the on-site buildings and the apartments, of course, have to comply with the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. ARB review and approval would be required for the new buildings and the compliance with the historic structure standards for the Amagansett Historic District, as well as regarding the design, scale, and appearance of the proposed multiple business complex. DOT, New York State DOT could also be required if alterations are proposed to the site driveway or other areas in the state of right of way. Suffolk County Department of Health Services, as we just mentioned, for the sanitary system, and East Hampton Town Board could be if they'd like to pursue the transfer of flow rights. In addition, the fees for special permits associated with the proposed project would be required. Lighting information pertaining to exterior site lighting was submitted, but requires further clarification prior to the review. Upon formal submission, a comprehensive site lighting plan would be required that meets all provisions of the town code, and that I've just listed them here. I don't want to bore you all by reading them, even though it's very invigorating. So
Take that home.
thank you. Yeah, giving a little homework, don't mind me. Same thing with the landscaping. There was no information pertaining to the site landscaping or screening. Upon formal submission, a comprehensive site landscaping plan should be submitted, and we encourage the use of native vegetation wherever possible, of course. Title of plans, this is standard. Some of the plans were actually labeled with a different project name. So for the formal submission, we recommend just making sure that all the development plans have the same exact name for our filing and for clarity. And then in conclusion, finally, the applicant proposes apartments within a commercial structure that would provide affordable housing, which is a clear, significant need for the town. However, the density of businesses proposed may not be consistent with the historic character of Amagansett, and several elements of the preliminary plan, including site navigation, parking, and landscaping, will require more detail to ensure adequate provision of services and compliance with special permit standards. The full site plan submission would need to adequately support density increases and support compliance with all technical issues and special permit criteria.
Congratulations on an incredibly thorough report.
Now my lips are zipped, no more.
And to think you just went like that, so that.
Can we ask questions, Tina?
Specific questions, Tina, regarding the report.
Yes.
You
Yeah, just very quickly, I'm just interested in how the proposed structure compares to the footprint of the existing one-story structure. There may be what, 5 or 6. I don't know what the number of businesses are currently in the one-story.
They're about the same. The existing building has a footprint of about 6,900 square
Okay.
feet, and the new one's proposed at 7,200.
I see,
So
okay.
they're comparable.
Okay, all right.
Existing is 6,000 something. really?
6,900.
Including the white one in the front.
Yep.
Okay.
Footprint, just the
Footprint.
overhead.
Mhm.
footprint.
Right, and then, but the number of uses that are in that back building, are there like,
So the number of uses in the back building is 6. The number of uses in the front, so this is the proposed floor plan for the renovation of the building. So they're not labeled as neatly and nicely as the other ones, but there's 6 here. And then there's 4 in the front building on the ground floor. I don't know if there's second story offices. Okay.
And there's a few offices and almost one use, no matter how many you split it up. So, but it's office upstairs.
right, gotcha.
It's not residential.
No, sir.
Maybe, I'm a little confused about the elevations, because there seem to be 2 buildings. Am I,
Yeah,
They're putting their add-on
There are
story
2
on.
now, and there'll be a.
They're adding.
they're adding a third, there is a third building.
you want to say?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
it's one.
it's depending on how you want to
Show
look
the
at it.
elevations again.
There's 2 and there's going to be 2. There's the, should I just?
You might want
You know what, I know where you're going, I had the same.
Sit down, I'll sit.
over.
Maybe I'll show a picture.
Yeah.
It's a new building.
There's the historic building in the front, where the
Yes,
computer store
understood.
is.
Yeah.
Then there's the building that presently has the pet supply store.
Exactly, Yes.
And that building's getting renovated.
That's the one that's getting renovated. It's kind of all connected, so that's whether you want to count that.
He's calling it one, you can call it.
I was
two.
calling it one.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think it's.
Okay, all right, but that's,
So-
that second part of it is, you're considering that part of the whole.
Right, so that's.
So show the elevation, if you would. The rendering, rather.
Sure.
Then there's a third building that's
Well, we're considering it in addition to the second.
No, it's gonna be separate.
You're considering this as one, and then the
Yeah.
other is two.
Yeah, so that's that kind of, it exists, it's being renovated, so there's nothing really being changed there,
Here I
so
see 6 entrances.
that exists
So the
as.
renovation's gonna have 6
right.
stores.
Right.
Okay.
And then there's another building.
Yeah, I know. I'm not counting.
Go to rendering.
The rendering is more clear for the, yes.
Yeah.
Because right now.
There we go.
Yes,
There we go.
This is the back, this is the back building, the new
Correct.
buildings are gonna exist.
Correct.
Looking towards Main Street.
Yeah.
All right,
and
so
then this is-
There's that's
there
probably
you
a good one
So
there.
6 plus a new building that has X number of uses. in it.
Right.
Correct.
6 plus 6
downstairs,
plus
4 apartments.
4, and offices.
So it's 6 plus 6.
There are 12 uses in the back, is that right?
Some in that
In the-
white building too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But compared to I'm just trying to
No,
make
Yeah,
sense. of it.
fair.
So compared to the number of current uses in the back building, which is,
I think it's
A
6.
repair garage.
I think it's.
right, I know
Okay.
the Balkans is in there. There's 6 uses, is that correct? There are now 12 uses in the back, plus the apartments in the
It
second.
will,
That's proposed, I
That's
think that's right.
proposed, right?
I think that's right.
So others-
Just trying to make sense of the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was too, because I wasn't clear how many were in the front building. I think because I know.
Yeah,
it's
well, forget the
offices.
front building for the moment.
Right.
It's 6 and 6 plus the apartments. That's what
Correct.
we're
I
looking
believe
at
that's
yes.
correct,
the
yes.
proposal.
Yes.
Expansion is the new building, really, at the back, right?
Yeah.
And also the renovation.
Well, this looks like pretty much a new building in where the current, with the pet store and.
Well, that's gonna be,
salon is.
it's not new, it's gonna be renovated, so it's not being.
It's not
torn
getting
down.
any
It's
bigger.
not renovation,
It's more
okay.
space, it's more store.
It seems like more storefronts.
well, right now, there's.
Storefronts, not storefrontage, yeah, I think I believe there's 3 there.
There's 3.
There's a
yeah.
small little, shop in there.
There's a hairdresser, there's a pet store, and there's a garage.
in terms of square
Oh, so there's
footage,
just 3. And now it's gonna be 12.
no.
Why don't we let the applicant?
in
Yeah.
terms of square footage, you have, right now, the way it exists now, there's almost 7,000 square feet.
Yeah.
When you're done with this proposal, they'll be just slightly over that 7,000.
From a footprint standpoint, correct.
No, just
No,
the,
it's gonna be
just the
14,000.
front.
Of the existing,
Of-
No, the new building is 7,000.
And what are we adding to that?
6,000.
We're really adding increasing the footprint slightly from the repair garage to the new building that's in the back, and then the second story to it with the commercial
Yeah, in
apartment, with the
terms of
apartments
square
over.
footage, what are you adding there?
So
Yeah.
the renovated building behind the 2-story historic it's intended to be in the same footprint.
Right,
It's a plus or minus a
How
little.
about, I think he's asking about the new structure.
The new structure is 3,600 square feet per, I'm sorry.
here, why don't you- so just quickly, Brian Matthews, Kirsten Cooley for the applicant, and this is Alex Holloman from Bowler Engineering also for the applicant.
Yes. The new structure, entirely new structure in the rear is 3,600 square feet, first floor with retail uses. And then there's the floor above it, identical, 3,600 square feet of 4 affordable
So
apartment
you're
complexes.
almost doubling the square.
Why don't we let him give their
Let's let them,
presentation?
let's let them do their presentation.
wait, we were asking Tina questions.
We were asking Tina questions specific to her presentation.
Yeah,
I want to get,
one.
I want to give the,
I mean, we didn't get through that.
no, all right, well, you know what? Ask your question, and then I want to let the applicant.
Whatever-
Have their time.
Whatever's.
I'm just trying to figure out what this sort of speckled area.
That's a lawn.
Lawn.
Yeah.
That's proposed lawn.
I just asked that question about the square footage, please.
Go ahead.
The current square footage, Tina,
Yeah.
is about 7,000 square feet.
Yes.
You're proposing to add almost the same amount with that new structure? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay. I think the site plan shows it pretty well. If we just look, right, so the 2-story historic building is 1,409 square feet of footprint. That's not changing, correct?
Nope.
Then the existing one-story building to be renovated will be 4,500 square foot. You said that's a little bit of a enlargement. That wasn't clear on the plan, so that's a great clarification. And then the new proposed two-story structure, right? 3,600 square feet on the ground floor, 3,600 square feet on the second floor for a total of 7,200 square feet.
Thank you.
Brian, Ms. Smith.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. And thank you, Tina, for, I agree, a very thorough memo. So, you know, well, Brian Matthews again, Matthews, Kirsten Cooley, 241 Panago Road here for the applicant. Again, Alex Holloman here from Bowler Engineering as well. You know, I know that we're here. This is a kind of a preliminary review, so I'm not going to talk about it too much because mostly want to get some feedback from the planning department, from the individual board members. But just a couple things that I wanted to point out. You know, of course, well, we already kind of gotten the wheels moving on a traffic study, so that's expected. So there's no issue with respect to that. I believe the parking calculations, it was a reference in the memo. I think those are depicted on the site plan. Aren't broken down for the proposed retail uses. You know, there's no drainage or septic proposals, you know, it's not required for part of this initial application or pre-submission, but you know, the applicant intends to, of course, put in, you know, an IA, nitrogen reducing system. And just the other critical point, the property does already benefit from a multi-business special permit. That's part of what was granted in 1988. So that was a little bit unclear. I think it says 98 in the memo. That's a typo. That's okay. But it was a little bit unclear because it said that you have to seek a special permit for the multi-business. Now we may be expanding that a little bit and we'll have to go down that road, but property does already have a special permit. It's, you know, site plan obviously, and a special permit for a multi-business complex. So I just wanted to make sure we had that starting point. So, you know, we think it's obviously a positive redevelopment. You know, it takes the garage and it makes, you know, obviously you can look at the renderings, you know, very preliminary, but they're really nice. It shows the area is going to be, you know, cleaned up, provide, clean up all the back area, provide more, you know, almost double the amount of parking that's already there, and provide something that's pretty critical, you know, for commercial, for accessory affordable apartments over commercial structures, which, as everybody knows, is, you know, something that everybody endeavors to do and the town certainly encourages. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, where we are at this point in time. I don't know if you had anything particularly you wanted to add before we heard from the board members, but, you know, unless there's any questions for me, I think we're kind of mostly here to hear from you.
Well, that's fine then. Lou, this is yours, right?
First, I want to thank Tina for a great report, really thorough. A lot was in there, but even more importantly, I really appreciated your presentation, your oral presentation. You were invested in what you were saying, as opposed to just reading it by rote. I didn't phase out once.
Thank you. It's snappy. Write that down.
Yeah, great job, really.
Yeah, that's nice.
You know, there's a lot of good things about this project that I like. And I have some concerns, but, you know, I'll just quickly go through the positives. You know, I looked at the special permit standards. I think it meets all of those. It seems to comply with all 14 of those requirements. I'm glad that the vehicle and boat storage, that area there is going to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
You know, that's going to be gone, be removed. I love the idea of the affordable apartments, 4 apartments, that's great. You know, I'm always concerned about the sanitary system, and I think in this case, I think with the transfer rights, I think we'll be in good shape there. So, you know, I still need to know a little bit more about that, but it looks like, you know, we're in good stead with the sanitary as well. It also meets the central business district guidelines, so that's all good. I'm a little confused with the parking. I know that there are 29 spaces that are approved now for so I think with the 29 spaces plus 4 for the apartments, and then 20 for the additional 3,600 square foot that you're adding. So that brings you up to 53, and I think There's only 49 spaces required, right?
I think 53, and we're proposing 54.
Yeah, so you're you're well above the requirement there. The only thing was.
Well.
No, I'll be like.
Thank you. Not well above. You're above, which to me is great. You know, usually we
Better
get
than
bumps.
below,
Right,
for sure.
right.
The only thing with the parking is right now that area is all, you know, pretty permeable, although God knows what's been spilled on it, but. And now you're gonna pave that whole area, so that's a concern. So if there's anything that can be done, semi-permeable or whatever, novel ways to deal with paving that whole big area, that to me would be positive. Another negative is the increased traffic that I think is going to result with this project. So I think a traffic study will need to be done. The rear setback encroachment, I think, is a problem because of the residential area behind it. And then, you know, the biggest negative I have is the increased intensity that you're creating. I mean, when you compare this project to what's next to it, the Amagansett Square, and the number of locations that are in that much larger area. When you compare that to the area that you're building all of these establishments on, it just seems too intense, too much intensity for that small area. So that's a big problem for me. And I think that also affects the parking problem. So anyway, those are my comments. But you know, overall, I like the project. I think that you just need to work on those areas that I mentioned.
Go to Sharon and go around this way. But I should ask you a question. What kind of businesses does the applicant envision taking those 6 spaces?
I think basic retail.
Well, 12 spaces.
Well, you're right, well.
Right, but I think the envision is, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, the rendering says Starbucks is mightily ambitious. But
They don't even
I
have a
didn't
coffee
notice
shop
that.
in Amagansett.
I think it's just, I think
really don't.
basic
Sorry.
retail.
what does that mean? Because,
Yeah. I mean, well,
that goes to the issue of what what kind of traffic you expect to
Yeah.
generate.
I think it would,
Jazz,
it's right there.
No,
It's, I think it's in there. I think the idea would be like a dry retail store, not a wet retail store, like something like that.
okay. Well, yeah, actually,
Just, you know.
Starbucks is certainly a wet retail.
Correct, correct.
But I mean, it is like dress boutiques or hairdressers or.
I don't know about a hairdresser. I think that's
Oh,
probably,
that's wet.
well, I don't even know if that's technically retail, but perfumes. Yeah.
Pet store.
Yeah, you be both.
That's
What do you
my
mean?
store.
The reason I ask.
I'm there too much, probably.
You get to a point where you won't know necessarily who your tenants are gonna be until you finish. But I think that does relate to the intensity of use, which I share Lou's concern.
Yeah.
You know, you're putting 12 individual uses in a very confined space.
It's actually 16.
Well, plus the house, the facility.
No, you count the.
Oh, plus the one in the front, yeah, you're right.
So it's 16.
16, and then there's the people coming and going from.
And
for apartments.
offices and pharmacies.
That's right, and so if the number has to be adjusted, then the number will be adjusted, but I think, you know, I understand the concern, and that's why the applicant not only has no issue with it, but would have every expectation of doing the traffic study, and
Yeah,
we've already gotten the wheel moving on that, but we didn't really want to wait to do that to get some feedback.
No, again, I just, that was something that took that.
No, I mean, I think that's basically the biggest, I think, concern of this application that probably most of us are gonna have is the density of what you have going on there. You know, here it says 15 uses, right, are under the code. And it seems to me it's more than that, because isn't each apartment an individual use?
No, they don't count as separate principal uses.
Really? Okay.
But they do each need a parking space. right?
And the parking spaces are allocated for, I think I agree, I think the apartments and offices, no matter how.
So offices is one,
Are
apartments is
each.
Each
one,
one gets one.
No, or one, like offices, no matter how many offices, one use.
but there are 3 storefronts, I think, in that historic building.
Under the storefronts, yeah, I'm talking just the
Yeah, I know,
the
so
second
there's
floor.
3.
Each retail would be its own
15,
separate,
16, 17.
each
We're up to
retail would be its
17.
own separate use.
Yeah. So we're up to 17,
Yeah.
as far as I can count. So you would need a variance.
Or to readjust,
Sure,
sure.
readjust, so, but yeah, I think the traffic study is gonna be critical for us to really, scrutinize this application more, but density is a definite concern. And it's a very narrow lot, so navigation, I think, is gonna be really important as well. It's really long and thin, and I was surprised that 53 parking spots, even with all that new building, that even 53 fit in there. And yeah, other than that, I think that's the work.
You said that the wastewater flow without a transfer would exceed what's permitted. Did you actually do a calculation?
I did, I don't have it with me. 600 is, no.
Usually we ask for that on the site plan.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to address that, again, it is a preliminary site plan application, so, it's more of a question, it's more here for you guys for concept, so, there weren't specific numbers. I can tell you the flow for retail or office is based on square footage. It's actually not even an individual number of units. I did a rough calculation. I don't remember the exact number, but for just the business uses, it's just about 500 gallons per day. This site is almost exactly an acre, which means it could have 600 gallons per day as a matter of right. So they're just under what's allowable. However, if you add the 4 apartments, that puts them over. Each apartment is going to be 150. There's 4 of them. That's another 600 gallons per day. The only way they could do that is to provide an on-site sewage treatment plant, which I don't think is part of their plans, or to use the town's affordable housing credit program to transfer that density only for the affordable housing units. But the numbers do work if based on that total square footage and for the apartments, if they use that program, but they're just below what the allowable flow is for the business uses.
And that was factored in for the affordable component of it to come under that 1,200 number.
I mean, I agree with Lou and Sharon that I would much rather see something like what they did at the square. I don't know if this lot lends itself to that, but that was such a really well designed, lots of open space, lots of grass, and not chock-a-block storefront. So I don't know if that's possible, but I would say that's more in keeping with downtown Amagansett. I would be inclined to support the transfer of sewage flow credits if the number of retail uses were reduced significantly. I agree with Lou. I would not be inclined to waive any of the setbacks, especially with the residences in the back. And that jams a little bit of parking. That's pretty much it. And then the traffic. I mean, the traffic in downtown Amagansett, I can't help but see these new commercial site plans we're reviewing as how much worse are we going to make it? Because it's already really bad. The traffic out here is just awful. And to add a lot more traffic in and out, turning, you start looking at all the different turn possibilities. I wonder if there's any way you can combine, it looks like you butt up against the Amagansett Square access road. And I'm wondering if there's any way to combine them.
To go back to their parking lot?
Yeah,
You mean?
and their curb cut.
How do you think?
I don't- I think there's a property in between.
There is a property.
It's real estate.
No.
There's Kansas City.
Look at the
This parking lot.
Right. But we can sort of look at it.
Yeah, you can cut through that retail.
Yeah, so you can come back, that's what you were saying, the egress in the back.
Yeah. But that's kind of
But it's not,
informal
but
thing.
it's very informal and it does not, cut through to the main parking lot.
Well, we want to go down again. You have to go out
Yeah.
and maybe.
No, take a look at the area before you make up your mind.
Well, no, it just doesn't cut.
Oh,
There's a fence there.
yeah.
Yeah, they would
I mean,
have to-
I think Sam's thinking you gotta go.
And
through
there's
the real
currently
estate.
no way to get from this parking lot to the square parking lot.
Yes,
No.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, so
There's
we
no way right now.
Yeah, it's adjacent. We have it on the screen now, and you can see
Yeah.
here's the property, and it is connected to the property directly to the east.
I'm talking about right here.
Well, they'll lose spaces if you do a cut through.
Well, and what's the goal there?
The goal is to get the traffic off of
One
27.
curb cut, 127.
Yeah, one in and out curb cut on 27.
That parking lot's plenty congested.
Yeah,
too.
sure it is.
So,
And if you take out 3 or 4 spaces to 2 or 3 spaces
on
anyway,
both sides.
for a cut, and that's right, on both sides. For a pass through, maybe
Right,
defeating
and
the
we're-
purpose you're
we're
trying
not-
to accomplish.
Proposing to add a new curb cut.
No, Randy's suggesting that maybe you can do a pass through Amagansett Square. And again, that's gonna require a lot of alignment of the stars to do that.
Well, that's why we're here to not strip all these ideas. I think that's, I'll take a look at everything.
Put a no left turn, is that, or is that DOT that
The one
prohibits?
on 27?
Yeah.
Oh, that's DOT.
You can't, so the businesses can't say, please don't take a left turn.
No,
out
they
here."
can.
They can,
That's what they want.
because that should really happen there too. That's what.
I don't-
it should
So-
be.
Well, ultimately, that's DOT's call.
Yeah.
Whether they want that. I don't know, I mean, I definitely share Randy's concern about the, if you can't do anything, the one single curb cut on 27 and a tremendous more amount of many more vehicles coming and going through that one single curb.
Right. And well, that's what the traffic study will determine whether,
I'm glad to
whether it is a
hear-
lot, whether it is substantial. I don't,
I'm glad to hear you're on board with that.
yeah, certainly.
Wouldn't want to have the traffic. So, Randy, did you have anything else on that?
No, I think once we see how much how much each unit adds to the traffic, then it might give us an idea of swapping units for traffic congestion.
Michael?
So, I'd like some clarity. It says ingress and egress. I mean, why is that there? That wasn't clear enough.
On the property to the east,
Yes.
I think, and I think we're just trying to get a little clarity on that too. I think as part of, site plans and subdivisions that were going on back in the mid 80s, late 80s, they had this property here also use this as ingress and egress.
Oh, but the idea isn't to try to connect to the.
No, that's an existing situation.
Okay.
So I did read in the file that at some point in time, they were trying to have shared use to cut down the traffic entering Montauk Highway from multiple driveways, right near the intersection with Indian Wells. I think there was a recommendation that an access easement be recorded. I didn't see any evidence of that in our files, so
I'm
if
not
we
sure.
have that,
I'm not
right,
sure if it was
so,
ever done, but we can.
so that was the
it's
intent of
recorded.
that.
So I wonder too about if someone parks at the Amagansett Square parking lot and walks over to these stores. How is the Amagansett Square going to feel about that? I was over there before the meeting and there's it's a fence and to do that, you have to walk almost to the sidewalk of the highway and then come back down. I would like it to be more pedestrian friendly where you could park in one location and go to shops in the square and then walk over to not Starbucks.
I don't know how they feel about it. I think they feel that any the way any private business would feel about somebody parking in their lot to go somewhere else. And, you know, you only have the one, you know, big commercial lot, on the north, you know, on the north side behind.
Well, that would have to be a conversation with the owner of the square, right?
Right.
Whether they would even.
Yeah.
Or-
Well, the reverse could work too, where someone parks in your location and walks over to the square. You know? What's the?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how, you know, I don't know how diligently that's monitored, you know,
I would do
to
that.
the extent, yeah.
I would do that.
Yeah, I think most people would too. Most trips are
So
multiple trip.
So the affordable housing is the idea that employees of the stores will be living there? Is that the idea?
I think the way that it generally works, in my experience, is that, yeah, it's either you can do employees of the stores itself, or then you rent it out with the affordable housing.
I think you can rent it out to whomever you want. I was just curious.
Well, it goes through the housing.
It goes through the housing.
Well, no, you still, I looked at this a little bit, you can still, you don't have to rent it to somebody you don't like. You can say, I'm not gonna rent it.
No, you
No,
can.
but it goes through the
It's still
housing.
good.
Well, just make sure that it's
Store qualified.
As long as it has that designation, yeah.
So the garage is going away? Is that?
That would be the plan, yeah.
Okay.
And then,
In its own way. And I agree with everyone else about that rear yard space. That is just, I can't see that working at all.
when you say just so I'm saying,
The parking.
that encroachment into the parking
25
setbacks
foot
is that?
rear yard building setback, yeah, that's just.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to understand that really quick. If you could just-
The idea is that.
The parking to the
Oh, I
house.
fumbled with the map, okay, go ahead.
Parking to the house.
So this area, these parking areas, there's.
Relaxing
4 or 5
the rear
of
yard
that,
setback.
you put it back halfway
Needs
through.
variance, yeah.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of varying sizes that would be.
Not a variance, we can relax.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it can.
I think, you know, when a more formal application gets made, and then we can talk about, you know, screening and vegetation, and we can talk to that neighbor, and then we can probably have a more informed discussion about what's best to do there, what everybody feels most
Okay,
appropriate.
if it was my house, I would object strongly.
Well, they may be happy that there's, you know, not boat storage and a repair garage there. I don't really know. I can see anybody falling down on either side of that, you know?
If you, the idea, I think Michael's idea of integrating with the, where. That's a.
Yeah. Yeah, you can ask, I don't know what that, you know, if you can run into roadblocks, how much more we can, no ways to go.
He's a very community-minded guy. I mean,
And I'm sure the engineers would have to take a look at that too, to see if that actually worked.
Well, I live, you know, west of here.
Right.
Making a left-hand turn on Montauk Highway is crazy. If I would park in the square, and I already sealed them out, you can go over to Hedges Lane and go south and over and get on the further lane and, you know, get back to my house.
Yeah, I think there's a no right turn on Hedges.
You're not supposed to turn right. When you come out of, the square, there is a sign there, for better or for worse, and maybe it means nothing. You're not supposed to turn down toward Bluff Road.
Let's put this, there's so much traffic on 27 that it's actually really easy to take a left-hand turn because everybody is.
You just kind of merge out and everybody's only going 10 miles an hour anyway,
I'm
so.
telling you, that's the case. I
You
live in
do,
Narragansett.
you do just kind of go because no one's really looking.
Integrating the pedestrian life in this whole area would be important.
Yeah.
Anything else? That's it, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the memo, you know, highlights a lot of the issues that you'll encounter if you do a formal proposal. Obviously, the number of uses, septic, all those things. You know, I think certainly for a project like this, you've got to be code compliant, which you know, and it's not clear from what you've given so far where all those things fall. It seems like the number of uses might be a little bit high. As everybody else has said, it's a pretty ambitious project. It's a big development. It seems like you're trying to go right up to what's allowable, and perhaps you might be a little bit over with this first pass. You know, I'm certainly open to it. I agree with the others that the parking, that I would not be inclined to relax the parking setbacks in the back. We typically don't do that with the residential area. We'll see what happens there, but I think that parking could be another issue here, with that, relaxing setbacks and just generally whether it's sufficient for what you're proposing. I know your first calculation suggested it is, but I think we'll see. The truck loading and unloading is also very important. Not only like can you show the number of spaces, but is it going to function both for commercial deliveries and activity coming in and the customers, employees.
Yeah.
That should all be included in your traffic study. Thank you for, being ahead of it and being willing to include that. I think another important issue here that will be, when we deal with community character, but just the overall appearance. I do think it's going to be pretty important. I think the renderings maybe more of an ARB issue, but wanting to keep that looking like,
Yeah, and we have the architects, Sabbath, they have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So we know that that's something that's, the renderings are the renderings, and then.
I get it, yeah, I just want to mention.
It's on everybody's radar, so that's, something we're gonna have to do.
Glad to hear.
And I think for me, it's the overall coverage is the issue, the total coverage and building coverage. I'm maybe in a minority here, but I'm not so worried about the number of stores. In fact, I think it might be a nice thing to have. I mean, ironically, when Against Square was installed, it was not very well received.
Right.
And now that, which is different from the stores and old Against it, is like, so there's this weird thing that happens with any sort of new idea. But I don't think having smaller stores is such a bad thing as long as you can contain it, because presumably smaller stores have less people. Again, I think the traffic study will show this, but it's a tough town to have any kind of business in. And if there's some vision, I don't know what it would be where smaller boutique places would work, then I'm open to it. Again, assuming that the numbers are.
Yeah, that is like a, wine cabin.
I'm not.
That's a meeting for another night, probably.
I'm going to Ed.
I'm not saying that. I get all critics of that. So yeah, I'm open. I do think it's a pretty ambitious project, and I think that and you're probably prepared to feel a little pushback on that. I don't think it's reasonable to. I don't think it's possible to make this look like Against Square. I'm not sure it's desirable. But I do think putting another, taking out a garage, whether you think that's an improvement or not, but putting in 6, stores there, and another building equal size in the back, plus these affordable housing. Affordable housing, I think, is a great addition, and I would support whatever transfer of septic rights that you can to make that work. I think that'd be important. But it's a lot.
Okay.
But I remain very, very open, and I think that there's probably a path forward here, assuming the traffic is not prohibitive and the on-site flow works. Hopefully that's enough. I know the whole point of this is for you to get feedback so you decide whether you want to proceed. That's what I got.
Yes, this is just the beginning, of course, right? I think you've gotten some pretty good feedback from everyone else on the board. I think I sort of echo a lot of the concerns that people have. I do think it is a very constrained site. And going from basically, I think we decided there were 3 uses, forgetting the front building, 3 uses in the back. Now we're going to 12, essentially, right? That's where we're going, 3 to 12 uses in the back. It's a lot, it definitely is a lot, as other people have said, on a very narrow lot. There's really not an opportunity here to separate the housing from the retail, which is usually something that, we kind of look for, just because the lot is that narrow and constrained. So, yeah, I think this obviously is a site that was primed for this kind of redevelopment. I was kind of wondering, when somebody was going to bring a plan to do this, So we want to make sure that what we do here is, supports the community. I think the issues that have been brought up about, pedestrian access, integrating with the rest of Amagansett, I'm not sure how we do that, but I think those are really valid points. I think they're things to be considered. But overall, I really, echo the rest of the board members in that this is probably too much use on a very narrow site. And, we definitely don't want to create a traffic issue, a congestion issue here. We don't want to create yet another kind of discrete unit, within Amagansett, right? We really created felt that could integrate it better into the rest of the hamlet. So just, off the top of my head, and I know that, obviously the owner wants to optimize the return on this thing, but I mean, I would sort of say, if I really had my druthers, I'd say, make the back building renovated building, right? Cut the number of uses in half, create some additional lawn area in there, improve the parking and the flow and the truck access and access to the housing, and call it a day. That may be overly ambitious on our part to throw that out to you, but just so you know, kind of what I'm thinking.
More green.
Go ahead.
You go first.
You see, the more I'm hearing, the more I'm thinking that actually this could work very well as small boutiques. Maybe not, 16 or up to or something like that. That maybe fewer storefronts, but the same basic idea of small retail. And that's why I asked the question before, like what kind of stores do you envision? I think that if you had, low intensity, but kind of retail where people would go as a destination to buy things that they can't get elsewhere, it might work. But the parking is definitely going to be an issue if you have a more intense kind of attraction. Also, Ian raised a good point about trucks. Stores get deliveries. Deliveries all happen usually between 10 and noon in the morning, earlier than that. You'll have truck traffic in that parking lot, which for the folks who are living there, if they're not working in the stores, might have an issue of getting in and getting out, something you might need to think about. But I also agree about the setback in the rear. I don't want to interfere with the residents that's there or make their life, more difficult with cars right up against their backyard. But again, that's an issue down the road. I think it could work. My initial reaction was, this is too much and too intense for the property. But as I'm thinking about it and listening, I think it could work, but it needs to be scaled back a bit. Also, I know it's just a rendering, but I think the next time we come back, it should be more Amagansett.
Understood. Yeah, understood. Yes, now.
Yeah, I guess so. So, Ian, you had something, Randy, you had something, and then let's go through the questions, which I'm pretty sure, I should add, I'm really glad to get that you're on board with the traffic study, because that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And you see how we get.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Ian, you had something?
Yeah, a couple of things quickly. Parking, I think another parking issue is parking out front. I hate to try to maximize it, but, we will want to keep parking.
When you say the parking out front, we're talking about the parking that exists already?
Yeah, the couple of spots.
I get
it. I think that's already, but it's a redevelopment.
No, understood. I just wanted to make sure I understood where we were talking about.
Yeah, I think the more you can hide it, because that's sort of weird.
Yeah, so those are there, and I'm the applicant.
I mean, it's part of redevelopment. I think we consider.
But they're, the idea of pervious and impervious screening and everything else, that's going to be all on tables.
Well, the pervious and impervious, I think, is a tricky question because
it's a big area.
Right, and heavy traffic.
With people.
Our code recommends the opposite, just because they don't want dilapidated parking.
Right, but the landscaping and I think that's all screening off, and I think that's all fine. Yeah.
But I mean, the safety with the sidewalk there and just the appearance, it's just as part of redevelopment, it's something you should consider.
Yeah.
Other thing I wanted to say is the one other thing with a lot of different stores is the trucks, because everyone's gonna have their own deliveries. And you have to show that there can be trucks and cars at the same time. If you look at other retail places around town, there's oftentimes just parked in the middle of the parking lot.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. And then I think another important point with the affordable housing, I don't remember how it's worded in the code, but I think that it's suggested that there's outdoor space for each of those, and it's maybe tricky in this downtown setting, but maybe that little yard in the back, or there's some way to separate. Obviously, you can't separate it from retail's above it,
right?
But maybe there's a way to have a more residential feel, and that there is something in the code
Okay. Speaks to that.
Maybe you can swap the spot that the green space is with the building, put it more center. Again, I'm not trying to draw,
This is a very broad.
Yeah.
But you, pardon the expression, I think you might want to think out of the box on that.
Okay.
It's a little box.
Okay.
Eric, were you raising your hand?
No, I was sneezing. I was holding it as sneeze.
Oh,
Right here.
And you got anything else? Right, I'm gonna run through the questions real quick, and I just think, if anybody has anything, just please shout it out. Should the applicant submit a more detailed narrative and confirm compliance with special permit criteria on final submission? Should the applicant clarify the number of uses proposed for the site to confirm consistency with multiple business complex standards?
Yes.
Yes. Should the applicant submit additional detail on building and total lot coverage to facilitate more detailed review and consider reduction of impervious surfaces? And this one, should the applicant perform a traffic impact study? Yes. Should the applicant, should the applicant submit a more detailed parking calculations for both existing and proposed uses? I would say yes or no. Should the applicant revise plans to show more detail on site navigation, emergency access, and drive aisles? Yes or no. Should the applicant plan to reconfigure the parking areas to be consistent with town code, for example, not in the property frontage on Montauk Highway? Is a waiver for encroachment in the rear setback replacement of parking appropriate? I think you're getting a sense pretty unanimously on the board on that one. Should the applicant coordinate with the state
Historic
Thank you, State Historic Preservation Office to determine if an archaeological study is warranted? It is in that Amagansett, it's like a big swath of archaeologically significant Amagansett. That's right in the middle of it. Should the applicant submit a detailed grading and drainage plan with formal site plan submission? That's a yes. Should the applicant submit more detailed information regarding existing and proposed sanitary systems with the formal site plan submission? That's a yes.
Landscape.
Wow,
We'll work that out.
Yeah, we even made teams. You have something else?
Well, I just wanted
He wants you to build a sewage.
So, you mentioned that there was a notation about an access easement. Can we find out if that was ever granted, or was it a condition of approval?
Yeah, I think we'll look into it. I just want to prove I already have that as a note that we're going to look at.
Covered it. Thank you very much. Move forward.
Okay, thank you.
The development of this development.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Have a night. Thank you.
Still the last people here.
No, we
I
have.
know, I tried.
Well, there's the last people here. These not the last matter that we have on. How shall we do this next and last? On the make a motion.
I'm not really sure.
I'll tell you what, let's go.
Well, we're gonna vote.
Yeah, but once, let me understand the parliamentary. If the motion is made and seconded, are we precluded from further conversation? Once the motion is made and seconded, the Robert's Rules of Order that remains in the back of my brain tells me that. So what I'm going to recommend that we do before the motion is made, go around the table, let everybody say their piece, how they feel. You've all read, I presume, the resolution that's been proposed. Let's everybody, this is an important application, it's a controversial application. We need to be, I don't want anyone to feel like they didn't have a chance to say their piece about it, but we do need to move along. So we have, yes, 62 days will expire, September 17th?
I think so, yeah.
This meeting or next?
It's either this meeting or next meeting. We have this resolution here tonight.
Thank you.
Go around tonight, Tina. Congratulations on your
Thank you for all
first
being so nice.
of many.
Okay. Appreciate it.
We'll give you a really tough one next week. And, but I think it's important that we go around the table. We have to be careful though about, remembering that the record is closed on this. And the record has been closed for quite some time. So, and we also need to remember that this matter has been on this board's agenda. I think it's been on since before I was chair, and for a few years. And, but it's been discussed, and so let's have what may or may not, depending on how things go tonight, be a final discussion, final comments. Sharon, I'm going to give you a pleasure of being first.
Well, I'm going to be very brief. I think we've discussed this, like you said, many, many, many times, and I read the covenants and restrictions, and I am ready to sign off on it.
Sure. Randy? Long and
Yeah, well, I think it's important for us to draw a line with overdevelopment. And I think this application represents overdevelopment, and it's an appropriate place for us to draw a line. These are sophisticated investors. They bought a property with the CO that said they had 34 motel units, a pool, and a deck. That's what they bought. So to the extent that we're going with a tavern and a bar that was never approved but was in operation, and we're saying we're considering a 1,400 square foot basement kitchen for room service. To me, that is that's as far as I'm willing to go. And I'm not willing to say that it's okay for anybody but overnight guests. It's room service. It's not a restaurant. It's room service. The idea that these more than 15 ownership entities and their families and their guests, that can be enforced. It's just absurd. So for me, this is where we have to draw a line on overdevelopment. And it's an old file map in Montauk, map 174. It's been a chronic problem. As we've discussed in the record, there's 6 times the wastewater flow, and we are increasing the wastewater flow by adding a 1,400 square foot kitchen. Hopefully we will. I just think in every aspect, in terms of parking, wastewater, that this is clearly does not meet our standards, and that we should draw the line and say, and deny this application.
I wonder how they get food now. I wonder how they get beer and wine now. Do the tenants, the guests of the hotel make a phone call, go to the store, bring it back? I wish there were more parking. I wish there was like a shuttle bus maybe from the railroad to the
Hopper.
a hopper that goes right there. They don't even need a car, right?
No.
Well, that's great. More of that would be.
They have a hopper there.
No further comments.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate the concerns. I actually wish the applicant were here. I know that this is sort of a resolution, but clearly there were some things up in the air. Look, I think what they're asking for at the core, from what they're stating they want to do, is very reasonable. I think the only question is whether the language, is appropriate. I think that, a guest of the hotel who has a friend over and wants to have food, I've got zero problem with that. I think the only question is whether we have, designed the covenants to, capture the intention here. But I do think there's balance. I think this has been, going along for a long time, and it's not all the board's fault for what it's worth. You know, there's been delays on all sides here, and code changes. But at the end of the day, it's in a resort zone. I think it's reasonable to ask for food for your guests. I would be lying if I said I had no concern about it, but I think that if you read the code, they provided mitigation that alleviates a big concern. I mean, Randy's point about septic is an important one, but I do think that the IA system they're putting in is not a small detail there. The added flow is a concern for sure. I still think, and I'm a layperson here, I think it's a net gain by having a better system, because I think the system they have right now is not good. So for me, it's always been about parking. And I think that our code instructs us that if we're going to allow something like this, they've got to provide proper mitigation. And I think the covenants, to me, meet that threshold. So I'll vote for it.
Okay. I think their request was reasonable, and we had a unanimous decision that we agreed, and we said, yes, we want to end this. We've gone through a lot. The request to service their guests with a sandwich, as they put it, or a beer that made it sound very casual, is very reasonable. And I was all for that. We were all for that. We all agreed. It was just, and I remember it was their idea. They were the ones who said, okay, we're not requesting a restaurant anymore. We're putting all that aside. We just want to be able to service the guests. And we all said, yeah, that's reasonable. And then when we drew up the covenant, they came back and said, unacceptable overnight guests, is that term, unacceptable. They didn't even show up for the meeting when we had to take that up. And all of us, again, unanimously said, no, we're not going to go for that, and just take that overnight guest phrase out of it. Then they wrote a letter and said, the reason we took it out is because what if a kid who's staying at the hotel invites another kid and they're by the pool? You mean to tell me we can't service the guest or the guest? But what if an owner wants to eat something? We can't service him? Now, I mean, think about that. Do you think that is a concern? If you were the owner of the hotel and you were up to this point where you had gotten approval to service the guests, which is what you wanted all along, you would endanger that because this is a major concern of yours, that you can't service the few hotel guests who are going to invite other guests to be with them? Do you think that's really what they're concerned about? That's why they're fighting for this so hard? If you do, then go ahead, approve it. I don't think that's why they're doing that. I think the reason that they're fighting that so hard to put that language in, and not just have overnight guests only, is because they want to open up the definition. They want to create a loophole. They want to make it obscure, equivocal, ambiguous, so that if there ever is any kind of code enforcement, they're going to argue that those are guests of guests. It's like the loophole that's in the rental registry. Everybody knows now that if the code enforcement guy knocks on the door, they're going to say, it's my cousin, I'm cousins of the owner. Everybody's going to say now, I'm a guest of a guest. They can just invite the entire world. They could make this. And as far as what Randy was saying, this is a sophisticated group. The way this works is they buy a property, they add value to it, and all of that additional value that they add to it, I appreciate, and I think it's important for Montauk that we take old rundown properties and they're renovated and beautified. But the investment strategy is to buy a property, add value to it, and then sell it at a gain. Now, then these people might be all wonderful people of integrity and everything else, but the next owner, if he decides that he's going to add, he needs to add value on top of what he paid for the hotel, and he wants to now open it up to the public, he's got to weigh in with this language that we're about to approve. He's got to weigh in. It's an ambiguous language, and it's going to open up the doors. And you know, code enforcement doesn't like it because they know that this is that's what it'll do. But anyway, that's my spiel. And I think we're making a mistake. I think we're opening up the floodgates here for them to do whatever they want.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with some of the points that our dissenting members are making here. I do have my own concerns. And I'm not particularly thrilled with the way the whole overnight guest conversation unfolded in the last couple of meetings. I think there's something about that doesn't feel quite right. However, having said that, I think that the language that's been crafted in this last go round is adequate to prevent the thing that I think is adequate to prevent the kind of issue that is being referred to here. I do think we've closed a loophole. I think if there's any code enforcement issue, it's going to be around parking, that they'll get busted for parking before anything else happens. I don't really see this as a way to get around this idea of not having a restaurant. I don't think they want to turn it into a hangout. I think that we're adequately protected with a future owner. I think the language is good, and I'm ready to go for it.
Thank you, everybody.
Is it possible to ask a question?
Now you're going to say smile a little bit.
No, I want to hear you.
First, I come from the perspective, but after we, well, I really don't want.
That was a question.
I'm not going to. Never ask the lawyer. I come from the perspective that they're a hotel and they're entitled to sell their guests food. I come from the perspective that we shouldn't be writing a covenant that with the assumption that it's going to be violated, or that the applicant is looking for a covenant that it can violate. I think that presumes bad faith, and I'm not going to presume bad faith on the part of any applicant. I think that the applicants have stated that they want a ability to serve food to the people who are guests of the hotel and folks who are with the people who are guests. I don't think there's anything wrong with the ownership of the hotel having the right to have the kitchen that they own make them a meal. I think but there's nothing wrong with that either. I think that the concern, this is not a matter of putting it on code enforcement, because frankly, the enforcement of this covenant is going to sit first with the applicant. If the applicant starts to abuse the covenant, and I just can't imagine that this hotel would say to its guests, listen, if somebody comes to you, you're a guest of a guest. I just think that would be such bad business that it's unrealistic to think they would do that. I mean, you're talking about, individual rental registry units, that's a different thing. This is a business, and it's a business that wants to be an upstanding business. The representative said they're charging $1,300 a night. I don't think that people who are coming into Montauk and paying $1,300 a night are going to want to participate in something that's going to essentially be to facilitate a violation of the law. So I don't think it's a matter of code enforcement having a burden put on them. I think the burden is on the applicant to make sure that they comply with the covenant that we're voting on tonight as this, and that if there are violations, I think you just said maybe it's that it's going to show up in the parking. I mean, if all of a sudden you have 30 guests of guests in 7 rooms and you have 210 people, vehicles in a parking lot that is, unable to handle it, then that's when code enforcement will be called. And that's when they'll have a problem. I never liked the idea which I know is no longer an issue, of them, counting parking in the street. I remember that was where this, when I came on, that was where the conversation was. I didn't think that was appropriate. And the question is, are we ameliorating the potential issue of parking with this language that's in this covenant? And I think that we are. I mean, I understand that, you can come up with all, nightmare scenarios you want, but I think that at the end of the day, it'd be bad business, just bad business for them to deliberately violate the covenant that we're coming up with. So that's what I come down on. Let's try and keep the crosstalk, because it is after the court.
I guess really this is a sincere question. If you're, I'm not going to vote for it, but if you're voting to allow the kitchen to serve meals to the owners, and I count the owners as at least 15 entities plus others, you're voting to allow the kitchen to serve meals to them and their guests. Where is the seating for this going to take place?
I mean, they have, the park benches now or something?
I mean, you're coming up with the worst possible scenario.
No,
It's like all of a sudden we've got 50 people for lunch.
I would answer that, Andy. I think that the whole thing for me is parking the problem. And so what we don't want to do is have people who otherwise couldn't be there, coming to be there. And so I think it's, conceivable that the kitchen owners could go there now and order pizza and eat pizza. That can happen right now. So this might make it a little more appealing by having a kitchen there.
I mean, they could go there and not rent a room and just eat.
Right, and you know what?
Yeah, they can do that.
That's a restaurant.
The answer is.
Well, no, but I'm saying right now without any approval.
Well, all of our site plans, we have to show indoor and outdoor seating, and we have to have the number of seats, and we haven't asked for that yet.
Well, you know what, they're eliminating all this. I mean, that's.
Which I think is a positive.
Which reflects the intention that it be primarily for room service. I think in your scenario, okay, you have 15 owners, and each owner is there with their family. So now let's say that's 45 people. Maybe that's 2 cars per each of those. And then each of them has a guest. And there's a friend. So now you're up to 9. Now you're up to 9. Let me play this out.
No, and all the units.
Well, no, I'm not up to that.
Okay.
So you have 90 owners who have a substantial financial investment in this property, are all going to be eating at the same time, and preventing other folks from parking, the guests who pay to be there, all for the sake of not going to harvest for dinner. I mean, it just strikes me that it's bad. That's really bad business. When you have a retail store in a shopping or in a strip center, and you have employees, I don't know if you've done this, but you don't let them park in front of the store. So you park over there in the back where the dumpsters are. That's where the people who work in the store. It's the same principle. You're not going to consume all the parking for the sake of the owners having their pizza at in the hotel, and thus create the situation that's going to cause code enforcement to come down on.
Sam, let me turn that question around to you, what you're saying. Why is it so important to them to have, like you said, why would they want to eat there anyway? They would go to Harvest. Why is it so important to them to put language in this covenant that they could serve food? Do you mean to tell me if you were the owner and you own this place, you would request language in the covenant because you're afraid that you can't eat there because the covenant doesn't say that? Don't you think they're putting it there for some other reason?
Well, if they are, I'm not here to speculate. We'll look at their motives. That's number one.
Yeah, we can't.
That's number one. I can't, and that kind of goes to.
It's not a matter of being nefarious. It's a matter of being what could this turn out to
That,
be?
you see, but
I mean,
what
there's
you're
a
doing there-
situation in Montauk that is nefarious, if you want to use that word. A lot of people are violating the code and serving liquor, and that's where it comes down to. It's not so much eating. It's partying and eating, serving liquor and creating crowds where you're not supposed to, going over the limit. And this allows them to do it.
I think the problem with your question, the problem I have with your question, is that it presumes bad faith. Right? I'm not willing to do that. I don't think it's appropriate for us to do that. Why do they want it? Maybe the reason is because the attitude is, hey, I'm an owner. I want to be able to get a pizza, and I want my friend to
And
sit down.
you think because that language is not in the covenant, it's going to prevent me from getting pizza?
Well, they want.
I think it's important that if we approve something and the intention is, oh, they're gonna, violate this, but it's okay because only a small violation. I'm very uncomfortable with that. I think that rules should be rules. And if we all agree that a kid's friend who comes over should get food, I don't think we should say, well, we're not gonna say we allow that, we're just gonna look the other way. I think the point of our whether our words are perfect or not, you've got a good point. But I think the idea that we would overly restrict it, knowing that they're gonna violate that, is not.
I don't think it's.
You're giving them more than they have.
No, what I'm saying is, Randy.
It was gonna happen.
How, why, without our approval? I mean, they've already done this stuff.
If a kid comes over and wants, like exactly the scenarios that we're talking about, we're giving clarity to, they were going to do that anyways. If a friend comes over and wants a birthday.
Well, what they're saying is that I guess in that regard, it's admirable. They want to know that something that they're gonna do isn't gonna
The
run
idea
afoul.
that this is free service.
It's just
ridiculous.
clarity.
It's not.
It's also area service. Yes, they have a yard, so they're gonna serve it probably out of the yard. It's gonna go out to the pool.
It's
gonna
just,
go.
you have to decide where you're gonna stop approving overdevelopment. Long Island and East Hampton are suffering from people, it's death by 1,000 cuts. You say, well, we'll give them a little here, we'll give them a little there. You have to decide that you either want this place in the future to be overdeveloped, congested, have water quality problems, or you don't.
But what you're talking about is
It's
a comprehensive.
In everything we do, you can say that.
But it's,
Well,
listen, the answer to that is, for good or for ill, we deal with applications one at a time. Now, you and I could get into a very deep relatively deep philosophical question about the value of doing planning one application at a time. But we do one application at a time. I agree with you that a line, and it's really hard to draw that line because it's a little moving back, but that there has to be a place to draw the line. But I don't necessarily think this is that.
I agree. This is not, I don't disagree with you. In general, philosophically, this is not the application.
I think so.
I say we vote on this. I think you talk this to death.
Okay, so you guys
That was my
are,
line last week.
you're basically erring on the side of being business friendly.
Well,
I think we've gotten a lot out of this already.
Restrictions.
Randy, I think
We have done this for 6 years. We haven't been business friendly. We've been scrutinized this application constantly.
Yeah, but you're giving.
And in the end.
No, we're not giving them what they want.
No, they
Randy.
wanted a restaurant.
They wanted a restaurant.
They're getting.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
Sam, I suggest we stop.
I kind of agree with that. I didn't want this to become too much, but I think everybody has stated their position. Randy?
I'm not gonna introduce it, so whoever's in favor of it.
Aaron?
I will introduce it. That's fine. In the matter of the application of Oceanside Beach Resort renovation, the tax map number is 300-47-2-10.1. This is to approve a site plan special permit application for Ocean Beach Resort. Like I said already, I have read through this resolution and through the covenants and restrictions and moved for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
5-2. Listen, this is a tough, all right? And We will now go on to the next tough one.
Listen, I live in Montauk. I'm gonna take a lot of shit.
But you voted against it, so you're.
No, I'm gonna take a lot of shit from, the worst.
It's late. Well, we don't have another meeting until September 14th, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I know. How did that?
And then you have 3 in a row, too.
What?
So you
Then we have 3 in a row.
14th, 21st, 28th.
Labor Day.
Virtual lines to that.
All right.
Well, then, can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.